Descriptive statistics, assume mean. The concept of assume mean comes through when we include an additional number to the given data, or we remove a number from the given data. But considering assume mean, first of all, looking at the example numbers, if I just say we need to calculate mean here, your mean will be summation of x upon n. Summation of x upon n means 105 plus 103 plus 96 plus 92 plus 110 plus 106 plus 102, and this thing should be divided by the number of data that we have, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So we will be dividing by 7. Your numerator sum will be summation of x in the numerator will be, when you add down this thing, 105 plus 103 plus 96 plus 92 plus 102 divided by 7. The answer will be 102. That means this particular thing will give me the means. Now, if I just look at the data, you need to understand that your mean came through summation of x, that means adding up the number. The total in the numerator is, that means x, summation of x is 714, whereas your n is 7. So your total of the x, the data would be 714, whereas the total numbers are 7. This writing down the data is very important because this data will eventually help you out to calculate the assumed mean data. That means you will be able to solve the assumed mean data when you know the representation of the data. So that means for right now, you need to understand that summation of x tells me the total, whereas n gives me the number of the data that is there. Now, the other thing is the variance. Now, what is variance? Variance is basically how much your data is scattered or how much the data is spreaded. Now, to calculate this, you should be able to understand the formula, that is summation of x square. Summation of x square upon n minus mean square. Summation of x square upon n minus mean square will give me my variance. Now, when we talk about summation of x square, this clearly means that all the data that we had in the initial time, that is 105, 103, 96, 92, 110, 106, 102 again, each data will be squared. That means each data will be the data of the square, and then you will be adding down the values, which clearly means that 105 square plus 103 square plus 96 square plus 92 square plus 110 square, then we have is 106 square, and then we have is 102 square. That means the data that was there given at the top, each number, each data has been squared. Then we will be dividing it by 7 because 7 was the total number. We will be subtracting this with 102 square, that means mean square. We will be subtracting this with mean square, and in this way we will be getting the value of variance. We should be getting the value of variance. Your total ex square numerator sum is equal to 73054 divided by 7 minus 102 square. That means 102 square. 10404. Can we have the total of the variance? That means to solve this 73054 divided by 7 minus 102 whole square. Your variance will be 32.28. So the data that you received for variance is 32.28. Now, knowing the fact that your mean was 102, you got to know variance formula, that is summation of x square upon n minus mean square. There is one other thing. This also classifies how much your data is spread, but obviously in the version of mean and in the version of probability, your standard deviations are used. In this way, what you do is you just underroot the variance, that means summation of x square upon n minus mean square. That means your variance formula will be used in the radical sign. So that means if I just want to calculate the standard deviation of the above data, so this should be 32.28. That means this should be under root 32.28, which is equal to 5.68. So that means you calculated three things. One is its mean, the other thing is its variance. Then we calculated the standard deviation, that was 5.68. Now, let's go through the concept of assumed mean. What does your assumed mean say? That in the question, there might be data given, that your each data is being subtracted by 100. Each data is being subtracted by 100. So this particular concept will eventually show that one data is of x, the other data is of assumed mean, which is subtracted by 100. Your normal data was 105, 103, 96, 92, 110, 106, and 102. But out of all the data, when I subtract them, subtract 100 from each of the value, this will be 5, this should be 3, -4, -8, 10, 6, 2. That means the entire data that I use the value to calculate my mean, now I'll be working on the assumed data. That means each value is subtracted by 100. Now you need to understand, when the normal data is given, it will be reflected with x. But when the assumed data will be given, it will be reflected with x minus 100, x minus 50, x minus 40, which means any value can come in. So in other general form, your general form can be written as x minus a. That means when the data is represented by x minus a, we will consider that as assumed data. We'll consider that as assumed data. Now, knowing the fact that since I have 5, 3, -4, -8, 10, 6, 2, let's just work upon mean of assumed data. Your mean of assumed data formula will be summation of x minus 100. Because the data is reflected by x minus 100 divided by what? N. Divided by n, which is 7. But since here we can say 5 plus 3 plus -4 plus -8 plus 10 plus 6 plus 2 upon n. Your numerator will give me upon 7. Your numerator, which is x minus 100. Your value of the numerator will be, which is 5 plus 3 -4 -8 plus 10, 6, 2, which will be 14. divided by 7, that means E, which means your assumed data, mean is 2. So this should be assume of what? Let's say A. Assume of what? Let's say A. So that means particularly if I am working on my assumed data, that also means that my normal mean minus A, your normal mean minus A will be the formula as well. Now, how do we get this formula? Now, you need to understand. If I want to calculate the assumed data, assume mean, this will be 102 because this was your normal mean, minus 100, that was your value of A. So that means your assumed mean is eventually there, that is 2. So overall, whenever you need to calculate the mean, you can eventually use this through the given formula. That means assume mean is equal to what? 2. Now considering this, that we know that our normal data, now question might be given in this form as well, that your normal x is given, which is 714, and you have been told that this is of what? X, summation of x7 is equal to 714. That means total of 7 numbers is 714. And you will be told that your assumed data is reflected by x minus 100. Your assumed data is reflected by x minus 100. You will be asked to take out this value. That means you might be asked to take out x minus 100 sum. That means you need to take out the assumed sum. Now considering this, that you already know that this particular value, this value is your A. This is your sum of 7 numbers. So out of this 714 upon 7, what we get is we get your normal mean, which will be 102. Which will be 102. And out when you have normal mean and you have A, so you can eventually have your normal assumed mean as well, which will be what? Assumed mean will be equal to mean minus A. So that means assumed mean will be 102 minus 100. So that means assumed mean will be what? 2. Now when assumed mean is given, so your normal for x minus 100 submission, you will be doing assumed mean is equal to x minus 100 upon n. Your n is 7 for both cases. Your n is 7 for both cases. When n is multiplied with the normal mean, assumed mean, you will be getting what? X minus 100. This was just a bit of what we are going to do right now, which is that if I want to calculate the mean, what I'll be doing is I'll be summation of x7 upon 7, which is 714 upon 7. We already know that the normal mean was 102. Now, when we have this normal mean, we can eventually use assume mean minus A. So assume mean is your normal mean. To calculate assume mean, we'll do 102 minus what? A is 100, which is given in the question. So now we know that our assume mean is what? 2. Now using the assumed data, we know how do we calculate assume mean? Summation of x minus 100 upon n. So this will be, we already know that assume mean is 2. We do not know x minus 100, but we know that n is 7. So that means x minus 100 is equal to what? 14. So in this way, you will be asked to find out the sum, or you will be asked to find out the accumulated value of what? X minus 100 as well. And that will be used for the assumed data. Now, looking at this, you should also be well aware of the fact that your variance could be asked from the data as well. Your variance could be asked from the same question which we had 5, 3, 5, 3. We used -4, -8. We had 10, 6, 2. 10, 6, and 2. We had 7 data. We calculated its assumed mean, which was 2. We already calculated it now. Let's just calculate the variance for this. Your variance of this data will be, that means x minus 100 whole square. That means each number will be used as square upon n minus assumed mean square. That means when the data is given for the assumed mean, I'll be using the formula for assumed mean itself, which means that 5 square plus 3 square plus minus 4 square plus minus 8 square plus 10 square plus 6 square plus 2 square upon n minus mean was 2 square. Can we have the sum of the numerator value when we want to take out the variance for, that means ex minus 100 square is equal to what? Which is 254. Your n is 7 and your mean is 2 square. Your variance will be 32.28. And similarly, if I want to find out the standard deviation, this would be under root variance, that would be 32.28, which is equal to 5.68. So knowing the fact of what we did right now is that either the data is of normal or the data is of assumed. Your variance and the standard deviation will be same. Your variance and the standard deviation will be same. We calculated our variance here for this data, that was 32.28. We calculated standard deviation, which was 55.68. We got to know that each number is subtracted by what? 100. So each number is subtracted. We got 5, 3, -4, -8, 10, 6, 2. When we got these numbers, we eventually solved the assumed mean, which was 2. But now, considering the standard deviation and the variance, we made sure that each data was squared. So that means the formula was ex minus 100 whole square. When we squared each number and we divided by n, which was 7, we had to subtract the mean. We had to subtract the mean. But which mean? Assumed mean. And assumed mean was 2. Assumed mean means the data that has been subtracted, we have to calculate the mean for that particular data. So now when we got to know, we saw that the variance is same as the normal data. And the standard deviation is same as the normal data. So in the question, the examiner can frame in such a way that the standard deviation can be given. Standard deviation can be given, and through that standard deviation, your normal data can be given, and you need to find out the answers for assumed data. Or your standard deviation or variance is given, your assumed data is given, and you need to find out the answers for what? Your normal data. Through what? Variance and the standard deviation. Okay, now let's just work upon these 4 data. That is, summation of x7 values is equal to 714. The normal data that is given is 714, whereas same value square data sum is 73054. Assumed data, assumed data sum of 7 values will be 14. Assumed data sum of all the square values will be 254. Let's just say an additional data is added with value of 110. Now, First of all, you need to understand that is this your normal data or this is your assumed data. Your normal data is is normally in the lower side of values, whereas your assumed data is basically in the lower side of values, where normal data is basically in the higher side of the values. So we will consider this as your normal data. The question can be reflected in such a way that the question might ask you to calculate mean when data is added. Now, mean can be calculated through both. It can be calculated through assume or it can be calculated through normal. The question can be to find out standard deviation and also your variance. So there are three things again. Number one, mean, variance, and standard deviation. So if I just say that if I want to calculate through the normal data means summation of x7 plus x, let's say assuming this as 8x8. So the data will be added as x8. This should be divided by 8, which means 714 plus 110, and this should be divided by what? 8. So the answer for this will be your normal mean, which is 824 upon 8. I can easily say that this is mean of 8 data. Mean of 8 data. So can I have the answer? 824 upon 8. 103 becomes your mean of the data after 110 is being added. Now, if I want to calculate my assume mean directly, what I should be doing is assume mean is equal to normal mean minus A. So that means assume mean will be, your normal mean is 103 and A is given in the question as 100. So if I just subtract this by 100, so your assumed mean should be 3. So let's just prove it as well. Do we get 3 as our assumed mean through the normal data? So if I want to calculate through the normal data, so what do I do? E x minus 100 7 plus x minus 100 8 will be used upon 8. But how do we find out x minus 100? That means to find out x minus 108, what we need to do is 110 minus 100. So the answer will be what? 10. So which means what do we have here is that the sum of the 7 assumed data was 14. So 14 plus 10 upon 8, which is 24 upon 8, and your 24 upon 8 is 3. So using the normal assumed data, we calculated this mean as 3 as well. And using the formula, we calculated the assumed mean as 3 as well. So you can use it in both ways, through the formula or through the other way around. The other thing is the variance. If I go through the normal data way, so what we're going to do is summation of x square 7 plus x square 8 upon n minus mean square. What was the summation of x square 7, which was 73054 plus 110 square upon 8, and the new mean is 103 square. Can I have the answer directly for the variance? using the entire calculation, your variance will be your variance will be 35.25, and your standard deviation should be under root 35.25, which is 5.94. Now let's just calculate your variance and the standard deviation using the assumed data. Now if I say E x minus 100 whole square for 7 data plus x minus 100 square for 8 divided by 8 itself minus assume mean square. Minus assume mean square. This will give me what? This will give me variance. And the data that we had was 254. We had 254 plus 10 square plus 10 square upon 8 minus 3 square. This will give me the variance of the assumed data. That is the reason we took what? Mean as 3. So 254 plus 10 square. 10 square is 100. 254 plus 100 is 354. So 354 upon 8. 354 upon 8 minus 9. The answer will be 35.25 again. And the standard deviation will be under root 35.25, which means the standard deviation will again be 5.94. So standard deviation is 5.94. So considering that the entire data, that means when you add up the value, you will be adding up the value in the entire total form of submission. That means you, for normal data, you'll be adding it. For the standard deviation and variation, you'll be squaring the data, or you'll be squaring the assumed data, so that your value can come for the standard deviation and for the variance. In such questions, you need to remember that the examiner can always ask you, x minus 100 whole square value as well. Or the examiner can ask you x square value, summation of x square. That means your data of standard deviation can be given. When your data of the standard deviation will be given, you will be using this formula. You'll be using this formula. When you'll be using this formula to find out what? Ex minus 100 whole square, or the sum of the entire value. That means this will also be the reversal working as well. This will also be with the reversal working. Reversal working can always be considered through the past paper questions that we'll be using to solve. I hope that I've made myself very clear.